Okay, so let's dive right in. We're talking about this really disturbing attack that happened recently,
Yeah, in Indian-administered Kashmir, by Zarin Valley, near Pahalgam.
April 22nd, 2025. Just awful news, targeting tourists.
Uh-huh. And the details are pretty grim. 5 armed militants involved.
And the death toll, just
Yeah.
staggering, 26 civilians.
56 killed, yeah, including 2 foreigners,
Hmm.
and then over 20 injured as well.
People are saying it's the deadliest attack of this kind in India since.
Since the Mumbai attacks back in 2008.
Wow. That really puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Throws you right back into thinking about the whole situation there.
And amidst all this, there was that story, the local guide.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Sayed Adil Hussein Shah, a local Muslim tour guide. Reports say he died trying to actually disarm one of the attackers.
Just incredible bravery, trying to protect people.
It's a truly selfless act in just
Mhm.
the most terrifying circumstances. Tragic loss.
Absolutely. And, well, almost immediately after the accusations started flying.
Predictably, yes. India quickly accused Pakistan, saying some of the attackers were Pakistani nationals.
Right. Pointing to state support, essentially.
And Pakistan.
Well, Pakistan denied any involvement, flat out. And they've called for an independent investigation, the third-party one.
Which, again, feels like a pattern we've seen played out many times before. Accusation, denial.
Exactly. And it really underscores the deep-seated issues here, the Kashmir conflict.
Yeah, to really understand this latest tragedy,
Yeah.
you can't just look at it in isolation, can you?
No way. You need the context, the history.
Right, so that's kind of our mission today, isn't it? To dig into not just this single awful event, but its roots in that long conflict.
And maybe think about what could happen next, based on what we've gathered.
Exactly. Let's try and unpack it a bit.
Okay, so maybe a quick history rewind is needed first. This whole thing didn't start last week.
Not at all. It goes way back, right back to the partition of British India in 1947.
That's when Kashmir became this disputed territory.
Contentious right from the get-go. And it didn't take long for things to turn violent.
The first war was pretty much immediate, right? 1947-48.
Yeah, the first Indo-Pakistani war fought directly over who would control Kashmir. And that really set the stage.
Then there were others, 1965.
The Second War. Pakistan launched Operation Gibraltar, trying to, start an uprising in Indian-administered Kashmir by sending in fighters.
And 71, that was mainly about Bangladesh, but Kashmir was involved too.
It was. The conflict dynamic shifted, but Kashmir remained a flashpoint.
Then jumping ahead quite a bit, Kargil in 99, that was different, wasn't it?
It was. Pakistani soldiers and militants crossing the line of control that's the de facto border occupying strategic heights, a very dangerous escalation.
And then we had the Indian Parliament attack in 2001.
Yes, which led to a massive military standoff between India and Pakistan through 2001-2002. Very tense period.
And more recently, Uri in 2016.
That attack led to what India called its surgical strikes across the line of control.
Followed by Pulwama in 2019.
A devastating bombing. And that resulted in India launching airstrikes deep inside Pakistan at Balakot.
And Pakistan retaliating. It shows this pattern, this cycle.
It really does. A cycle of violence, followed by military responses, more mistrust. It just keeps feeding itself. 2 nuclear powers locked in this.
It's incredibly dangerous. And the human cost. I mean, the numbers you see sometimes are just...
They're staggering.
Yeah.
If you look at the insurgency in Jammu and Kashmir, say, since 1989, the figures are just heartbreaking.
What are we talking about?
Well, the sources suggest around 6,413 civilian deaths.
Just civilians? Wow.
Yeah, and then something like 14,930 militants killed, and the total number of violent incidents, over 23,000.
23,000, that's hard to even comprehend. It paints such a bleak picture of daily life for people there.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Decades of instability and violence.
And within that huge number, some attacks really stand out, don't they? They seem to mark turning points or major escalations.
Definitely. You mentioned the 2001 parliament attack blamed on Jaish-e-Mohammed. That name comes up a lot.
It does. And the Uri attack in 2016, 24 deaths there.
Then the Pulwama bombing in 2019, 41 Indian paramilitary personnel killed. Horrific.
And now Pahalgam this year, 2025, with 28 fatalities. Each one sends these shockwaves.
Absolutely. And what you see consistently after these major attacks is India stating that Pakistan-based militant groups are responsible.
With alleged support from Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI.
Exactly. That accusation is almost constant. Whether the evidence is always made public or conclusive is another matter, but the claim itself becomes a huge stumbling block.
Yeah, it fuels the narrative on both sides, makes any kind of trust or dialogue almost impossible, it
It
seems.
really does. It just deepens the chasm.
So, okay, we have this latest attack in Pahalgam, this long history, this deep mistrust. What happens now? What are the sort of near-term possibilities?
Well, one possibility that's always on the table after something like this is some form of limited military response from India.
Like the surgical strikes after Uri or the Balakat airstrikes after Pulwama.
Precisely. Targeted strikes across the line of control, perhaps aimed at what they believe are militant camps or launch pads.
But Pakistan always warns it will retaliate, right?
Always. They've been very clear about that. So any kind of military action, even limited, carries a huge risk, a risk of things spinning out of control very quickly.
Yeah, escalation is the big fear. What about other options, non-military ones?
Diplomatically and economically, there are levers too. We're already hearing talk again about the Indus Waters Treaty.
The water sharing agreement, that's crucial, isn't it?
Hugely important, especially for Pakistan's agriculture. India potentially suspending or altering that treaty would be a major economic blow.
That sounds like a really drastic step.
It would be. We might also see, more diplomatic fallout, expelling diplomats, downgrading missions further.
Which just closes off channels for communication right when they're needed most.
Exactly. It makes de-escalation even harder.
It feels like walking a tightrope. Every step could lead to a fall. Is there any chance of outside help here? International players stepping in?
Well, you often see calls for international mediation after these crises. The U.S., China, the UN, they usually urge restraint and dialogue.
But does it work?
Its effectiveness is limited.
Yeah.
It really depends on whether India and Pakistan actually want to be mediated, whether they're willing to engage seriously and make compromises. Historically, that's been a major hurdle. India especially often prefers bilateral solutions or resists third-party involvement in what it sees as internal matters.
Right. So if we weigh the current approaches, this cycle of attack, response, accusation, what are the pros and cons, I suppose?
Well, from India's perspective, a strong military response might be seen as, showing resolve, deterring future attacks, playing well domestically.
Projecting strength.
Right. And it does bring international attention to their concerns about cross-border terrorism.
Okay. But the cons seem pretty massive.
They are. The biggest one is the risk of escalation. We're talking about two nuclear-armed states. Miscalculation could be catastrophic.
Unthinkable, really.
Then there's the immediate human cost. Civilians inevitably get caught in the crossfire, displaced, livelihoods destroyed.
And the economic impact.
Significant. Tensions hit trade, scare off investment, damage tourism not just in Kashmir but potentially wider. It's bad for everyone in the region.
So the current path seems fraught with danger. Looking at the sources, what are some suggested ways forward? Are there potential solutions being floated?
Well, the most fundamental one, and the one that keeps coming up, is the need for bilateral talks. Genuine, sustained dialogue.
Easier said than done, given the history we've just discussed.
Absolutely. But reopening those high-level diplomatic channels is probably essential to tackle the core issues, not just manage crises, and to set up mechanisms to prevent escalation when incidents do happen.
Wait, talks first. What else?
Third-party mediation is often suggested, as we mentioned. Maybe not to solve everything, but perhaps to facilitate dialogue, build some confidence.
Like a neutral go-between.
Exactly. Someone to help rebuild a little bit of trust, maybe oversee some agreed steps. Another area is counterterrorism cooperation.
You mean India and Pakistan working together against militants?
It sounds unlikely right now, I know. But establishing some joint mechanisms, maybe sharing intelligence on certain groups, it could, theoretically, help tackle the threat more effectively and reduce suspicion.
That would require a huge shift in mindset.
It would. And finally, something perhaps more achievable in the shorter term. Public communication. Both governments being more transparent, trying to reduce misinformation and inflammatory rhetoric.
Managing the narrative, trying to build support for peace instead of conflict.
Something like that. Creating a more conducive atmosphere.
It's clear that this Pahalgam attack, as horrific as it is another symptom of this incredibly precarious relationship. It just hammers home how urgently sustained diplomacy is needed for any kind of stability.
It really does. Which brings us to a final thought, maybe for you, the listener, to ponder. Given this long, tragic history we've touched on, given the very real dangers of escalation, what kind of fundamental change, what shift in thinking might actually be needed to break this cycle?
To actually move towards a lasting peace in the region.
Yeah. And beyond the governments, what role can individuals, civil society groups, or even the wider international community play in encouraging that kind of shift?